Loss, my dear muse. Roses and sunshine on this wedding day until the serpent slithers up and takes a life away. Carnation and clouds, Eurydice's life falls in a teardrop from his eye. He walks alone. Reaching boundaries not to be broken, he follows the bite and descends. Crossover, roll over, push over, pull over, stop, over. Sacrificing control like the severed cords of an elevator, he drops. Ended but still being, transcendence unfinished, and mortality incomplete. He passes the gate, little to lose, nothing to gain, but fate only shows half its face to those concerned with future. His shape is not the same, no extremities missing, but something has left him, and desire's inspiration fills the void. Existence unwelcome, his timeline stops and so does he, caught in a moment of transcendent fury. No respect, petty fool. Do you dare test omnipotence? Yes. What brings you here? He responds with a tune, strings and a voice, power in plucking, power in choice. He plays the strings of puppets as gods dance to the notes. Creations collide and gods clash. Concepts of the created, a sacrifice of the artist, power through loss. His lip curls to one side suspiciously with the pleasures of his sound. Request approved. The lives of two are his to spare. One condition, don't look back. Present, future, and past meld, his fate already written in cloudy scrolls. There he began to leave with his prize, but without desire, without power, without loss. Don't look, don't look. He turns, he sees, she looks, she fleets. Anguished, he sits and plays new chords. His inspiration drives him because he sealed two fates in selfish regard for his one true love.
It took him 15 minutes after parking his car to find the cafe. Traffic was a nightmare on a Saturday morning in Paris. Tour buses seemed to stretch as far as the eye could see. He was already running late. Clinging to a map, a local passing by would never know that he wasn't desperately searching for the Louvre or the Eiffel Tower. He was searching for a man of legend in certain circles whom had agreed to meet him for an interview, not for a class assignment or publication, but out of genuine personal curiosity. In fact, the only reason the man had acquiesced was the assurance of pure confidentiality. He walked past the alleyway a good 3 times before realizing that he was supposed to walk down it. After about 200 feet of narrow alley bordered by tall, multicolored apartment buildings appearing to be hundreds of years old, the walkway opened to a small courtyard buzzing with people. There were only 2 cafes, but it wasn't difficult to see which one he was supposed to go to. There was one man that stood apart from the rest for nothing more than his sheer size, sitting in a small collection of wooden tables on the terrace of the cafe. He was not monstrous, would maybe turn a head in bodybuilding circles, but was a sight to be seen amongst the average Parisian. As he approached, the young man noticed that his size was uncommon, the swelling sinew lean, raw, animal-like. There was a short beard on the large man's face, thick and sprinkled with gray. His hair was longer than most men, slipping below the ear line well on its way to the jaw, and graying at the temples. He paused for a single nervous second before addressing the man before him. "Mr. Wolfe?" "Yes, you must be the lad Arthur spoke to me about," he said, unmoving, save for the lifting of his head from the newspaper and the motion of his huge arm towards the empty chair across the table. "Please sit down." He folded the paper and placed it under his chair while motioning to the server to bring him another cup of espresso and water. The young man noticed that there was no offer of a handshake, a small relief as he had read somewhere that Mr. Wolfe had once torn the arm off of an enemy with his bare hands. An irrational fear, perhaps, birthed out of an elaborated story to be sure, but present nonetheless. "Thank you for meeting with me, sir," the young man said feebly, awe apparent in the clouded blue eyes. "Of course. What else has a retiree to do on a Saturday morning?" There was a slight pause in his speaking, enough for the young man to consciously realize he didn't expect a warm voice emanating from such an intimidating figure. The bearded man turned his gaze to the tops of the surrounding buildings, ignoring the steaming cup and the server placing it in front of him. "Do you feel that breeze?" he asked. "Yes." The young man was taken by surprise at the question and answered nervously. "The city planner designed these buildings to work as wind tunnels to cool the inhabitants," he said, scanning the top sections of the buildings, noticing the chipping paint. "Interesting, eh? And beautiful, too." "Oh yes, I can only imagine how it must have been when they were first built and had fresh paint. Of course they have been repainted throughout the years, just not in a long while." He returned his bold, piercing eyes, only slightly visible through the amber lenses of his wire-framed sunglasses, to the young man in front of him. "Is there a problem, son?" "No, sir. Why?" "You're still standing." He laughed slightly to himself at the rigidness of the young man. "Oh my," the young man said. It was an awkward response, and he wondered if the large man had heard weakness in his voice. Feeling stupid, he sat down. "So what is it that I can do for you, Gary?" Slightly intimidated at the man's size and surprised at the architectural sidebar as well as the abrupt subject change, the young man didn't know how to ask the single question he came to find an answer to. "Let me tell you something right off the bat, Gary," the large man said, leaning forward on the table, sensing the young man's apprehension. "Don't believe everything you read." The change in posture made his arms look all the more large, seemingly on the brink of violently bursting out of the stretched cotton tee clinging to his biceps. Gary understood. He came right out with it, bottom lip unnoticeably shaking, desperately trying to conceal his nerves. How do you know an act is truly altruistic?" "Ah." Mr. Wolf leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs, and paused while stroking the thick whiskers on his chin. "Now that, young man, is a great question."
Well, before we end with our last reading, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge Dr. Bill King.
Yeah.
So many papers were inspired by your classes.
Check out the program.
Especially the middle page with Faulkner all over it. So many of the papers were inspired by your classes, and we so appreciate the many years of service that you've given to Western.
Yes, sir.
All right, we have one last reading for you. Get some of this out of the way.
Empty wine cups flying.
I will take this. I will fool with this mic. And I know this is rather...
I'll slide right ahead. Sure, come on. You can be right here. You're all right there. We're totally no symmetry. We're English, baby. We can do
This
this.
might seem a little morbid, but bear with us. In the epilogue to Robert Owen Butler's Severance, which is a really, really great book that we started the class with,
Check it out.
the author writes that a person can speak 160 words per minute while agitated, and B, after decapitation, the mind is conscious for 1 minute and a half, thus resulting in a 240-word stream of consciousness. In keeping with this idea, English 494 devised its own end, with a little help from me. I didn't think that. While discussing, and this is the scenario, while discussing the philosophical implications of altruism at the brick cellar, Grendel's mother bursts in and decapitates them with her son's arm, despite their disbelief in mythical creatures. This evening's performance will conclude with a collective response as their own streams of consciousness drift from one to another.
Daddy's little girl, Mom's Barbie doll, annoying little sister, loving fiance, up-and-coming author. Roles I've played, taken for granted. Endless happiness, forever mine.
We wander through meaningless time, but here we realize things are simpler than they seem, and now all I feel is warmth inside.
What's life without accomplishing your goals? Striving to be the best and becoming who you see in your dreams. Someone please let me know.
We stand prepared to sing, but words are not yet ready. From my tongue they spill onto the page, song just beginning, we stand. Stars mark our stepping stone left behind. Here, lost boys gather bound as we land weary from our flight. Tonight, we sleep forever young.
I watch it sway above my bed, the catcher of my dreams. A perfect web spun of leather and feathers to set me free.
Deadlines and assignments, moving constantly, moving farther from my grasp, moving towards a goal no longer my own. Mine or not, it is done.
Red lights thoroughly piss me off. Stop everything now and wait for green as I sit on the brink of achieving something called life.
He cuts the tree, cuts the green, cuts the brown. We eat the fruit, drink the water. Sun burns my face. I see her.
Excited? Anxious. Who will teach me? And show me this beautiful, brilliant, and fabulous stuff? Who will show me now? I will find my way.
The class of 494, it's now our turn to make you cry.
Not over yet.
We wanted to thank you for all the work that you put into this. Even though we had to write a lot, you had to read it all and meticulously go through it, and we had to sit and wonder what the comment "how so" meant, and it made us. It taught us how to elaborate and realize that things that we think are apparent are not always apparent to everyone. And also, whenever we found the word "interesting" in the comments, it always gave us a little hope that So, we have some flowers for you. Thank you so much for everything.
I have no words. I love you guys.
We love you. Oh, we love you.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope that you enjoyed it. Have a good night.